G'day viewers, this is the news about Train Sim World 3 and Southeastern High Speed. As usual, I read these articles to you to make them more accessible to people who don't necessarily have the time to go and read them, or perhaps are unable to do so. So let's get into it. Train Sim World 3, Southeastern High Speed, a timetable deep dive. They always look like a big nose to me. That's life. Anyway, in our roadmap articles following the announcement of Train Sim World 3, Joe and I, James, introduce you to a new timetable that will accompany the expanded Southeastern High Speed, London to Ashford and Faversham route. Strap yourselves in because we're in for a long one. In this deep dive, we're going granular in terms of detail, covering almost everything you can experience in the refreshed and expanded Garden of England. Before we go any further, we're glad to say the following is true for all platforms. There are no missing or altered services on Gen 8 consoles. And if you don't want any spoilers at all, then perhaps bookmark this and read it once it's released. Well, maybe not watch this video. Just know in summary, this timetable is roughly twice as much going on as compared to Train Sim World 2. Firstly, a recap. Train Sim World 2 Southeastern High Speed featured a timetable with its reference based on the 2020 working timetable. COVID, which as it happens was much quieter than previous years. COVID. This was due to the pandemic, driving down passenger numbers, resulting in vast changes across the network. Well, it's mostly because we were hiding at home. But anyway. The original timetable featured a total of 271 services. And there were hourly Class 395s between London and Faversham, dropping to hourly outside of the rush hour. Oh, sorry, half-hourly. Half-hourly Class 395, and thanks to the neighbour's dog, hope you're enjoying that. Half-hourly Class 395 between London and Ebbsfleet. Half-hourly Class 375s between Gravesend and Rainham, covering for Thameslink. Half-hourly Class 375s between Rochester and Faversham. Half-hourly Class 375s between Rochester and Gillingham. Summer Special 375s between Gravesend and Faversham. Class 465 playable on the Rainham and Gillingham Class 375 services, as well as the specials. 8 freight services using East Coastway. 4 Rail 2 services using the Northern Transpennine. There were several issues throughout this timetable which we wanted to address, such as incorrect start times for all services, resulting in departing up to 2 minutes late, making it hard to keep the timetable. No kidding. AI Class 395s running faster than they should be on High Speed 1, further compounding the lateness issue when controlled by a player. A lack of AI at certain stations, a lack of rush hour variety, sorting out where all the trains are actually supposed to be, and the use of pre-pandemic service patterns. When news arrived of the Southeastern High Speed extended route for Train Sim World 3, we sprung to work with the intent of delivering a much richer timetable befitting of such a line and soon to be found network-like status. Southeastern High Speed in Train Sim World 3. Ta-da! The first decision was made to start fresh, and then we began with researching a different time frame, as even now many services are not as good as they used to be. Reference was found for the 2019 working timetable, and having plenty of commuting and train spotting experience with this timetable as well, we knew it was the right choice for Train Sim World 3. So without further ado, here's a detailed look at the new timetable. High Speed 1. With 30 plus mile extension to Ashford International, including the maintenance depot, and a mere 3 platforms at St Pancras, the Class 395 service patterns were the first port of call to get right, and there seemed to be no better way than to follow the exact diagrams for each of the units throughout the day. Whereas a timetable will tell you all the timing and platform information for all services, in particular locations throughout the day, diagrams instead follow the trains themselves, allowing you to see a full day's work for every single unit. It's a very nice sky colour preview from Train Sim World 3. Here's 395 026 and 010 still tucked away neatly in Ashford Depot at the crack of dawn, and both units await a long and varied day on Southeastern Network. Each diagram has a number. 010 is on diagram 2 and 026 is on diagram 3. Let's see where they end up. As a pair, these two units make their way out of the depot in 5J03 above, before running 1J03 from Ashford International to London St Pancras below. The sun is rising. Rochester can be seen from the High Speed 1. It's looking like a good day. Gotta say, the new sunrises in TSW3 look pretty good. I'll just let the pictures sink in a little. At St Pancras, things are already changing. The two units are divided to carry out their separate diagrams. 026 will continue diagram 3, running an empty stock 5T90 down to Maidstone West, ready for a rush hour only service back to St Pancras. And 010 will soon start its journey on diagram 2, forming 1F08 down to Faversham below. This is but a snippet of the complex 395 movements throughout the day, just 2 of the 26 regular units out and about. As trains leave the route to other destinations, this doesn't necessarily make it easy to follow every single unit all day, but it ensures that we're able to get them all in the right places, as without that, certain services run the risk of being left out. Round and round. Throughout the day, and in the menu, you will see many services that are labelled St Pancras to St Pancras. Enter the loopers. These services, considered a single head code throughout their entire journey, C395s depart St Pancras, continue onward to the Kent coast either via Ashford or Medway, before continuing to complete the loop back to St Pancras. For these services, it is imperative to check the description so you know what you are driving, as St Pancras to St Pancras can mean St Pancras to Faversham, onward to Ramsgate, Dover and Folkestone, then Ashford back to St Pancras. Or St Pancras to Ashford, onwards to Folkestone, Dover and Ramsgate, and then Faversham back to St Pancras. So one way round or the other way round? Say that clockwise or anti-clockwise, go on, make it simple. It is common for the onboard and station PIS to display an intermediate station for ease of navigation. Otherwise it can be very confusing at stations such as Stratford International, where both platforms say St Pancras. One takes 7 minutes and the other takes 3 hours. Therefore, you can expect the trains to say destinations such as Ramsgate, Sandwich or Folkestone on the front. And yes, with these services essentially doing a 180-degree turn, the units do stay the correct way around when they eventually come back onto the route. As alluded to already, the full diagrams also allow for unique services such as the Maidstone West shuttles, drivable as far as Strood, unique empty stock movements allowing for non-stop running throughout, including through Ebbsfleet, so practice changing power modes on the move. Lastly, a favourite service of ours is 5J96. You'll have to wait and see why. So, from 59 playable Class 395 services in TrainSim World 2, you can now enjoy over 190. That's quite a bit more in TrainSim World 3. And we've only just started. Let's move on to the Chatham Mainline. Chatham Mainline. With the Chatham Mainline services, there was less of a need to exactly follow the diagrams throughout the day, as with portals at both ends going onward to London Victoria and the Kent coast, all that sorting out can happen in the background. However, attention to detail has still been put into all the train formation links and making sure that if a service ran, it goes in. One big difference between the 2020 and 2019 timetables is what a majority of the 2K head services do. In TrainSim World 2, these services just ran the short hop between Rochester and Gillingham, but in TrainSim World 3, a majority of these are now Dover Priory services in the off-peak, increasing the amount of gameplay between Rochester and Faversham. These services are timed to be Class 465 operated, but the Class 375 can run them too, whereas more mainline services are Class 375 only. 465-914 is seen at Gillingham Level Crossing on 2K20 from London Victoria, bound for Dover Priory. A subset of the Class 465 4-2 units were refurbished and fitted with first class being reclassified as 465-9s, as the addition of this creature comfort allowed them to perform long journeys such as this. They might have also needed toilets, just saying. You will now see a mix of 4, 8 and 12 car services, the latter primarily making an appearance during the rush hour, on additional services to or from the Kent coast, to the likes of London Cannon Street. Outside of the peak, most services are 8 coaches, with more in the middle of the day, as demand being 4 as demand is lower. Well, there's some good grammar. Why don't they just say in the middle of the day there's less trains? Oh. They really should read these articles. Really. A trio of 375s ease through the old platforms at Rochester on 1G91 from Broadstairs to London Cannon Street. The Class 375-9 is the high-density model featuring somewhat controversial 3+2 seating arrangements to pack people in by their hundreds. Sardines! This Rochester station was closed and the new one opened in 2015 as the old site was not able to meet more modern demands, and 12-car trains such as this couldn't even fit in the platforms. Another crucial element to the Chatham Main Line is coupling and uncoupling, which happens in the rush hour at Faversham. Services from London divide, with each half going to Ramsgate and Dover Priory respectively, and vice versa. Other services which are also present are the peak-only services between Sheerness and Victoria. These drivable between Raynham and Rochester, and the Sheerness branch AI at Sittingbourne. Getting to couple and uncouple stuff should be fun. There's a couple of places in the game where you can do that in TSW3, but having more is going to be good. 375s part ways at Faversham, each going to serve different lines towards the Kent coast. This happens at specific times of the day, and the easiest way to find it in timetable mode is to search for the AND symbol when selecting a service. From a numbers perspective, the Chatham Main Line looks about the same at around 120 services, but the extension of 2K services to Faversham makes it naturally busier, not to mention all the variety and added attention to detail, better recreating an accurate day on the route. The North Kunt Line. Perhaps one of the biggest transformations to services on the North Kunt Line, Gravesend Platform 0 used to be devoid of life. However, with the extension to Dartford, a whole bucket load of services are now present. Class 465 services from Gravesend go to Dartford, continuing onwards towards London Victoria and Charing Cross, each with a different stopping patterns along the way. Couple more 465s hanging around there. And it's 465903 accelerates out of Gravesend on 1D34 towards the capital. The service is so frequent the next terminating service is already sat waiting to enter the platform above. The same service is seen arriving at Stone Crossing, the sky now settling in for a calm night. Or is it? More of those cool new sky colours. If nothing else, this makes TSW3 worth it, to be honest with you. Cool skies. Skies sucked, just saying. During the rush hour, there are also services which are extended beyond Gravesend to the likes of Strood. These services feature a unique operational movement which sees Class 465 stop at Strood, pull forward slightly into the Medway Valley line and then reverse back onto the outer platform. Reversing is done instead of changing ends owing to the 465's lack of walk-through gangways. Thanks to additional work extending the playable boundary at Strood, this is something which is fully playable. You will see the full suite of Medway Valley Line AI at Strood as well. On a brisk autumn morning, 465, 915 and 913 pull onto the Medway Valley Line above and then reverse back onto Platform 2 at Strood below in the morning peak on 5L12. Having just come from Dartford, once in the platform, the driver can then change ends and make their way back. That means you get out and walk. So we've got a not in service and one going to Paddock Wood. And people say there's strange names in Australia. In Train Sim World 2, the decision was made to make things feel busier by adding the quasi-Thameslink services using the Class 375, which ran between Gravesend and Raynham. In this new timetable, we decided that leaving that gap open was much more appropriate and realistic idea. However, do not fear, while the Class 375s don't often appear at Dartford, you can still drive it on Slade Green to Ramsgate ECS moves, covering the full line between Dartford and Faversham. I'm reading between the lines there. They've made a gap in the timetable because they used to have services that pretended to be Thameslink. Does that mean in the future there's going to be Thameslink? In the photo, 375, 906 and 901 snake their way through a rain-soaked green heath on the 5L17 to Ramsgate Depot, where South Eastern's Electrostar fleet is maintained. Another pair will return from their maintenance on 5U93 later in the day. For all you number crunchers out there, this equates to at least 150 services which are entirely new, not something previously possible before, and in fact combined with the Chatham Main Line makes the Class 465 the most used train on the route. Freight. Who's that coming over the hill? That's right, it's time to talk shed. The Class 66 has been a staple locomotive on modern UK routes since the beginning of Train Sim World. However, that's never really had masses to do. 8 services in the original South Eastern High Speed, 13 on East Coastway, 16 on Great Western Express. With Train Sim World 3, these numbers combined are now blown out of the water. Let's go through the many freight services that are now included. Off the bat, South Eastern High Speed's Class 66 is accompanied by 2 freight wagons, the J&A, a large open wagon mainly designed for hauling aggregates, and a new MFA wagon. Much smaller in profile, the wagon is more accustomed to engineering type services. Unlike passenger timetables, which have strict, repeatable daily patterns, freight is a lot harder to pin down. Pick any day as reference and stuff will change. They will be allowed to run early or lose their slots and run potentially hours late, or not even run at all. So it was crucial that we stuck to a consistent plan when plotting the freight services. Rule 1, it had to be a service with a real head code, but you didn't want to start making stuff up. Rule 2, photographic or video evidence needed to exist, so we knew what the concept was supposed to be or how close we could represent it. Rule 3, within as much detail as possible, we needed timings so that we knew at least roughly when to start each service. If a service met those rules, on the list it went. Throughout the day, there is lots going on around Who Junction and the surrounding area. I wonder if they've got a doctor at Who Junction. Just saying. A large majority of the freight traffic occurs between Strood and Dartford and kicks off almost immediately with the first services departing before 1 a.m. The last gone at 10 p.m. So if you're out clubbing and you need a train and the real ones aren't running, just jump on a freight train. No, don't do that. You also get a handful of shunting operations, moving wagons around in preparation for other services, as well as light engine moves. In the photo we just saw, 66017 hauls 6Y41 through Dartford, a service formed of MFA wagons bound for the Isle of Grain. Freight runs at different speed limits to passenger traffic, and with the varying loads mixed with dynamic weather, no two services will be the same. There's more to freight than just these two wagons have to offer, however, and it's time to dig into layers, AI, and other neat tricks. Seasonal services. As alluded to in previous messaging, we now have the ability to enable seasonal elements to timetable layers. In a nutshell, what does this mean? Certain services in the real world do not run 365 days of the year. Railway operators change their timetables to meet particular demands and requirements, and operators of heritage services often keep their excursions to particular months when the desire for leisure rail travel is high. In the context of TrainSim World 3, this new feature gives us the power to define when certain services are intended for, and meaning that you will only see them as AI during a specified time of the year. You have the power of choice. If you want to drive these services any time of the year, you can, but when driving other trains, you won't see them unless you're in the right months. South Eastern operate a handful of their own special services, these being additional summer-only Class 465 services which operate between London and Ramsgate via Dartford. You'll only see these as AI between June and August, when the demand for Kent coast traffic is at its highest. 465905 takes the lead on 1E93, the first of 3 coastbound services that run via Dartford in the morning during the summer. Also note, we should scroll that back up so we can see it, shouldn't we? There's a QE2 crossing the very same bridge over the Thames, which High Speed 1 passes underneath, above. This service shall run non-stop between Gillingham and Faversham, so enjoy the nice long stretch. Later in the day, another pair make the late return on 1A95, which will terminate at Dartford, pictured at Lower Road below. Look at that sky. Bloody awesome. Proper daylight. Rail tours. You knew it was coming. 3 cheers. Or should it be chuffs? That's terrible. Who wrote that? For the rail tours included in South Eastern High Speed, the Spirit of Steam, rather aptly named, makes use of the LMS Jubilee class locomotive and Mark I coaches included in the Spirit of Steam Liverpool to Crewe. This pair of services, much like the freight, are based on real timings which steam tours have traversed the route in reality, and you will only see these in the latter half of the year. Note the quiet ad for Cajon Pass in the background. LMS Jubilee 45596 coasts through Chatham on 1S99, the outbound leg for the Spirit of Steam. The lunchtime service originated from London Victoria and traversed the Chatham main line, joining the route at Rochester. Later on, the train will return as 1P99, or its journey will take a slightly different path. The Charity Javelin, yep, that's an EMU on a rail tour, pays homage to the many fundraising tours that Class 395s have undertaken throughout the years. These tours are renowned for taking 395s off the beaten track, onto routes they've never been on before, so as a result this comparatively spends not much time on the route, but gives you the freedom to take the 395s onto Scenario Planner, Drive it in as many routes as you like before it returns home territory. My personal challenge to you is how many miles can you drive to fill the gap? Still have a big nose. 395015 is today's charity ambassador getting prepped for service at Ashford Depot above. After a long day of javelin touring, the unit passes through Rochester Platform 3 below. One has to be very keen to spend so long on these services. 12 plus hours on a commuter train seat is no easy task, but if they're lucky they might be in for a trick or a treat. Amusingly enough, I've been part of a group of people who have tried to visit every single Melbourne station in 24 hours. It used to be possible, it's not anymore because of the new timetables and all the new stations. La François Formidable. Yes, it's a bit off the cuff, we know. However, the extension of High Speed 1 and its 300 km/h speed limit almost felt rude to not let you experience that thrill. Pitched as a two-pronged experiment, a total of 2 TGV duplex trains from LGV Méditerranée will appear in the middle of the day, only in March and April. One train is a playable train, offering a total of 4 rail tour services on High Speed 1, and the other is an AI-only test service performing a non-stop run to London and back. Maybe I'll play the TGV on this route. It never really struck me as that much fun. It's weird that I'll drive a German train for an hour and a half at high speed, but not the TGV. Don't understand that, but it's true. The Rail Tour Duplex takes a rest break at Asheville International Platform 4. That's probably because the driver had to get off to go to the toilet because there's no toilets in dovetail trains. And while the doors cannot be opened to allow passengers to stretch their legs, as stepping onto this platform counts as breaching border control, they can at least enjoy the view of the test service as it races across the Ashford flyover. Layered and AI freight. As mentioned earlier, there's more to freight than the included wagons. To further increase the variety of freight on the route, a selection of playable freight services are using rolling stock available from other add-ons. A series of 8 services are included which operate between Hoo Junction and on the spur where the Isle of Grain branch splits off and Dartford. These services are using TEA wagons from the BR Heavy Freight Pack. And what this does is recreate the vital services that run between Grain and Heathrow Airport, delivering Jet A aviation fuel to power the many aircraft that take off every day. The 4 scenarios are loaded trains at Dartford, and the other 4 are the empty trains heading back to Grain for refilling. While rather short in duration, these services pose a hefty 3,600-tonne challenge, particularly in bad weather. Another service which included is 6V92 makes use of the HKA wagon found in Great Western Express. This rather unique two-parter requires a reversal move before later making its way towards Strood. In all these layers, you can experience a total of 53 services with the Class 66. 66213 gradually eases its way onto the North Kent line, making liberal use of sand to try and retain grip on this snowy morning to Heathrow. Notice the snow's built up over the tracks. Now that's kind of cool. All this weight being moved by a single locomotive just to fuel a fraction of Heathrow's daily flights, an incredible feat of modern industry above. Meanwhile, a double-headed 66 eases out of Hoo Junction on 6V92, outward bound for Tunbridge West Yard. And here it is at Tunbridge West Yard, in the rain. The freight action doesn't stop there. We saw an opportunity to add in freight throughout the route, further bringing it to life in ways never seen before. Several times a day, container trains using the FKAs from Great Western Express raced their way through Ashford International Station on their way to or from Dolan's Moor, a key staging point for freight services between the UK and France. This is of course accompanied by all-day southeastern AI at Ashford. You can also see similar AI traversing the section of the Tilbury line adjacent to High Speed 1, as well as along the brief section of the North London line visible to just the north of St Pancras. 1 or 2 containers there. One day hopefully we'll do something about the Moya patterns that turn up on containers. Really wish that would happen. Static stock has also been placed in a few areas with the new and improved fences along the Dagenham stretch of High Speed 1. Static stock as per reality can be seen here. And lastly, a suite of additional static stock has been placed on the East Coast main line, mimicking the various upgrade works it has seen in recent years to rebuild the approach into King's Cross. losing words. We're glad that the day has come to be able to share all this information with you, and we think we've proven just how much we can ramble on about this. Yep. All that's left now is for you to experience it for yourselves. On the 2nd. Or maybe the 6th. 2nd for me. Oh, and the total service count, let's just say there is well over 500 and leave it at that. As we close off with a final shot of Strood and 395026 making an appearance once again, we leave you here with a few thousand words wiser and hopefully raring to sink your teeth into this all-new timetable for Train Sim World 3, Southeastern High Speed. It's been a pleasure working on this, and we can't wait to see you all on the rails in September. And it goes on to say that you can pre-order it now and join the discussion and doing all those things on Twitter. I'm there. Instagram, not there. Facebook, not there. YouTube, I'm there. Twitch, yeah, I'm sometimes there. And TikTok, no TikTok. Sorry, don't do trains on TikTok. Not me anyway. Other people can. Do whatever you want. Makes you happy. Do it. Anyway, that's been the news. Bye.